Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hi, my name is Muhammad Khoiruddin and I am a student in Class 2C English Education Department. I made this video for the final semester exam for the public speaking course. In this video, I will tell a story by Bakdi Soemanto entitled Ice. This story is contained in his book entitled The Magician. Eyes are not everything, and at least Sully knows it. Of course, he still sees how important they are. Every sense of organ, whether an eye, an ear, or a nose, plays its own role, a very specific, predetermined role. The remarkable part is they cannot be interchanged. Basically, if the eyes are meant to see, then you cannot stick an ear in their place and expect it to do the trick. What ears do is listen, and the same holds true for a nose. An ear could never be replaced by a nose, since noses were designed for smelling. All this occurred to Sully as he watched Oedipus Rex on stage. Above all, he was struck by the tragedy of the situation as the great king poked out his own eyes and fled Thebes, bleeding and miserable. What made the moment tragic was not the isolated act of violence, but the blindness of the whole situation really. As Sully watched Oedipus put out his own eyes, he realized that they could never be replaced, that the king had just lost one of his main tools for understanding the world. It's Sunday, but Sully's not encouraged. He feels a little strange, not sick exactly, but kind of anxious. When Sully touches his eyes, he makes a connection. Maybe they are to blame for this anxiety, or is it a guilt? Last night, his friend Tuti dropped by. Sully has long been interested in her, not just because she's beautiful, but because she tells such engaging stories. Tuti was wearing a blue dress, a shade of blue that spoke to Sully of the sea and sky. How beautiful she seemed, her dark eyes lustrous, almost sparkling. Sully was entranced and could hardly take his eyes off her. Sully touched his eyes again. Was it a sin? He wonders. The Ten Commandments forbid adultery. But when Tuti arrived wearing that blue dress, Sully felt compelled to kiss her. This was not friendly impulse, but one of much different sort. Sully touched his eyes for the 18th time. Suddenly, the words of the Dutch pastor Hermanwers echoed in his mind. Even to have an adulteress, though is adultery. The pastor had proclaimed once on a retreat. You must not commit adultery in your mind. Sully began to understand the guilt that provoked this morning's bout of anxiety. Well, then, he wonders, what's the use of having eyes if they only lead to sin? Sully thinks a while. Perhaps about eyes, perhaps about something else. The voices of people chatting outside break into his thought. As he sits trying to determine who is out there, Sully becomes aware that his ears have taken over. He can hear these voices, he even recognizes them, but to be perfectly sure of the identities of the speakers, Sully would have to step out of his room and look at them. How crucial eyes become in the game of witnessing, hence the term eyewitness. Sully works at the university in the copy room. Professors bring him their class materials as well as their own private work to be copied. His workload is especially heavy at those times when professors must submit their work at a review committee. This committee evaluates whether their research is worthy of publication. A professor whose work is accepted and published is likely to advance a draw a better salary. So although all Sully does is copy papers, his role is vital, affecting the very success of professors. During those months of the year when committee meetings are tightly scheduled, Sully has to work overtime. He gets extra help from Subur, who also works for the university. Sometimes they don't make it home until 9 or 10 at night. Sully doesn't like working with Subur because whenever they put in overtime, Subur slips a rim of paper into his oversized bag on their way out. Sometimes he fills tubes on stencil ink too. Sully often reproaches him about this. What? Subur always says, his eyes widening. Still, then sometimes he laughs mockingly and adds, You know, as long as you keep quiet, no one in the world will ever know I am a thief. Sully usually shuts up at this point and doesn't dare to say another word. Not only is Subur a big, hulking guy with a wrestling title, he also happens to own the room Sully lives in. He rents it out to Sully very cheaply. Whenever Sully carries on about reams of paper and tubes of ink, Subur threatens to kick him out. Saturday, just before the office closed, the head of supplies came to take inventory. He was shocked by the amount of paper and ink used that month. I know you are an honest man, Sully, said the officials. That's why you've got to tell me the truth. So now, where did all the paper and stencil ink disappear to? I know you personally wouldn't be responsible. Sully didn't say anything. Of course, the head of supplies got very upset. By the next Monday, you'll have to tell me who is so fond of paper and ink. If you don't, I'll take it to mean that you are the thief and you will be fired on the spot. No severance pay. This made Sully sad. Now Sully knows just how unlucky he is to have eyes. He'll have to admit he is an eyewitness or else lose his job. If he's fired, how will he possibly support his aging mother and two younger brothers? He likes his job at the university. He's happy copying papers. The professors give him special present whenever they return from abroad, especially if they return with PhDs. Sully keeps this gift in his room. He has a tape recorder, a radio, and a beautiful jacket Dr. Marsenek brought back from Holland. The thing is, if he tells the truth and exposes Subur, he will be out of a room. Then where will he go? Rooms are extremely scarce and expensive these days. Every year, 2,000 university students flood Yogyakarta in search of housing. Sully has to decide what to do. His choice will determine his fate. He touched his eyes again and again. I am an eyewitness, he thinks to himself. Suddenly, he is startled by a sharp rapping at the door. Before he has the chance to answer it, the door bursts open, and there is Subur, in a t-shirt with a skull emblazoned across the chest. Are you going to turn me in? Demands Subur threateningly. Sully doesn't answer. Subur pulls a knife from his pocket and points it at Sully's eyes. First the right eye, then the left eye. You have rotten eyes. You have weak, ungenerous eyes. Suppose you didn't rent this room. Then where would you live? Think how many years I've let you stay here for practically nothing. Sully is silent, trembling. Well, what are you going to do? Will you tell? Answer me, shouts Subur. Sully thinks for a moment. His eyes witness Subur's crime, but it is his mouth that will have to report the act. It won't be fair for his eyes to take all the blame. In order to accuse Subur, so his eyes and mouth have to collaborate. Poke out my eyes and punch me in the mouth, cries Sully. So, you are sure you will report me? Sully nods. Now he is sure, convinced that every action has its own consequence. Subur thrusts his knife into Sully's stomach. His stomach is innocent, but nevertheless Subur teaches it the first lesson. Sully doubles over, bleeding. On the way to the hospital, he still finds enough strength to cry, My eyes, Subur, my eyes, not my innocent stomach. So, from the story, we can take a lesson that eyes and other five senses that are in us provide great benefits to our lives. So, you should grateful to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala for this gift and use this sense for positive things, not for negative things. And we must always tell the truth, no matter what there is, because no matter how sweet the lie, it will not be the truth. I think that's all from me. If there are mistakes, please forgive me. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.